Well, earlier, topic for today is making changes that last, right? And I feel, especially in this new normal that we are living, I think we've made a lot of changes to our lives, obviously, we had to. And I'm sure we would like to carry it forward, even when the life returns to the old normal. So I figured, let's talk about how to make those changes last, basically. The ones that we want, of course. And it kind of, the story starts, we have talked about this in past sessions that human beings, right? You, I, everyone else, we are all creatures of habit. Almost 40 to 70% actually of our day to day runs on autopilot, meaning we don't think about it, we just do it. Simple things like obviously brushing our teeth in the morning, taking shower, these are all on autopilot. When we were growing up, obviously our parents had to force us to brush our teeth and shower. But now it has become a habit. And we don't question why we should do it, we just do it. And that is the power of habit. And habits are not just physical habits like showering and brushing teeth. We also have mental habits of how we think. And we also have emotional habits of how we react. So, whatever we talk about today, although my examples are more around physical habits, are 100% applicable to even mental and emotional habits. So, what are the, steps of making something last or making something a habit? There are basically, I would say, three phases. Phase one is before planning, phase two is the actual plan, and phase three is recovery plan. So I'll just talk through those three phases. So phase one, which is before the plan even gets formed, okay? What happens? There are three steps that need to happen before you can create a plan of change. The step one, awareness. At you becoming aware of your desire to change. This may sound stupid, but actually a lot of times, we go about life annoyed about things that bother us, but we don't consciously take note of the fact that we have a desire to change. We assume sometimes, things will uh, will not change and cannot change. So we just continue on the quote unquote the current autopilot of being annoyed and irritated and life goes on. When now this awareness that comes, it should be, once you become aware of I have a desire to change or change something, it is about getting clarity of why you want something, right? It's not how to get it, it's not the plan of how to get something, it's like why do you want this change, what about this is bothering you. This is your vision, this is your longing. This is very broad, okay? This dream, desire, longing for something. I'll simplify it, like, for example, in my case, right? In Corona days, we're sitting in front of a computer all day long, and my back hurts a lot. I have a desire, after 2 weeks elapsed of Corona, I became aware. First, I was just living in pain, it didn't matter. Then I became aware of my desire to get rid of the back pain and feeling supple in my body. And obviously, there are a million ways for me to go about doing this, right? From I can do any activity from yoga, running, dancing, taking breaks, standing desk, I mean, you name it. But my desire is to get rid of my pain and feel supple in my body. So I became aware of my desire. Now, step number two is is acknowledgement. What this means is, ideas and desires that live inside our minds. Our mind is the invisible world. And acknowledgement is a way to bring that into the visible world. Meaning that desire needs to come and take a shape and a form in the physical world, in the visible world. And what that could be, like, in my case, I told my partner that I want to do something to stay healthy. And he witnessed and he said, good idea. Now you may not have a partner you can do it with, so you can, get on a phone with a friend, a parent, put a post out there on social media, make a journal entry, take a picture of something that represents your desire and stick it on the fridge. Anything, an audio, a written, a visual, any physical manifestation, shape and a form that you're giving to your desire, because your desires which live in your invisible mind, and that's where your fears live, that's where your shame lives. So unless we channel it and acknowledge it in a physical visible world, sometimes it gets lost and it never finds a way to come out. And so this acknowledgement is a very important part. Acknowledging, giving it a shape and a form in a visible physical world. Now, third step is allow. This is the most important and overlooked step. In other words, I call it permission. Right? There are two aspects to allowing. One, are you allowed to pursue your desire? And number two, are you worthy of it? AKA, do you deserve it? Now there is a saying out there that you don't get what you deserve, you get what you think you deserve. And most of us, especially women, right, we are all conditioned beings. And what is conditioning? Conditioning is basically somebody telling us what is allowed under what circumstances. So we build this glass box, inside which we live. And think of permissioning or permission as a window into that box, right? Permission allows you to peek, put your hand outside and feel the air. And eventually you can break the glass box, but before you do that, you need to allow yourself to see what's out there. And that window is the permission. This is not you getting permission from others. This is you giving yourself the permission. In my example, for example, I wanted to do some physical movement. Now, the time that worked for me was after my work hours and before dinner. And I know that by exercising before dinner, I was pushing the dinner time out. And in my conditioning of putting my family before me, I was not allowed to do that. So I had to explicitly give myself permission to do it and fight my guilt that kept popping back up saying, oh, are you sure because of you, your partner gets to eat late? And I obviously had a couple of arguments with my partner and, on how much longer is it okay to push the dinner and how can I squeeze my exercise in? So some of that can happen, but allowing yourself to pursue your desire and reminding yourself that you're worthy of it. That is very critical. So now those are what I call the phase one, before the plan, right? That's the phase one. Now we are aware of our dreams, we've acknowledged them, and we have allowed ourselves to pursue them. Now comes the tactical part, the plan. This is where the rubber meets the road, right? How are you going to pursue it, right? What changes are you going to make? This is the fun part, this is the creative part, and of course we have to have some strategic thinking here on what makes sense. So couple of things as you form a plan. Number one is what I call micro habit. And there is a lot of research out there if you Google micro habit and what it really means. Because before you can form habits, they start from micro habits. These are the smallest things you can do that are guaranteed to succeed. Example in my case of doing yoga, the smallest micro habit I focused on was rolling my mat and laying down on it to rest. This is it. It was so easy, right? For me, yoga became, hey, I'm going to roll the mat and lie on it and take rest. And sure, after, the good news was once I laid on the mat for 5 minutes and rested, I actually felt like getting up and doing some asanas. And that was the magic. Getting started is the 50% of the battle. And the micro habits allow you to get over that. Another example could be, for example, if you're trying to get some habit around eating well. And so before I get up to take the second serving to eat, and I know I'm overeating at that point, I allow myself to be lazy and to sit there for 1 to 2 minutes before getting up. So this is a micro habit. Be lazy for 2 minutes before you get up to get second serving. It's so easy, it's bound to succeed. And in those 2 minutes, the magic happens where my urge to eat actually subsides. And either I skip the second serving or my second serving is much smaller. But that's the micro habit, the smallest little thing that is guaranteed to succeed. The second part is triggers. What triggers you to get into your micro habit action? Right? For me, my yoga was an event-based trigger, meaning every time I came back from walking my dog, that was my trigger to do yoga. Now, triggers could be event-based, could be time-based, like every morning 6 o'clock, you can have reminders, whatever. The best thing is to take an existing habit and make that a trigger for your new micro habit. Then it increases the chances of you following that. So an example could be, let's say you brush your teeth every day. That's a habit. Now, if you want to do another micro habit of, let's say, gargling or whatever, flossing, you take brushing as the habit and then you put floss as the micro habit. Or shower and then you floss during the shower. Like something that you're doing already, and then that becomes a trigger for the new thing. And then it increases the chances of that new thing happening. The third is reward. Once you do your micro habit, you should have some reward for yourself, right? So congratulate yourself, as simple as that. Or, could be once I finish my yoga, I'm allowed to eat chocolate in the night. Or I get to watch my favorite television episode. Or I get to take a picture of my yoga asana and put it on social media and boast about it. Whatever the rewards, they could be simple as congratulating myself, or they could be physical material reward, right? Whatever it is, have a little reward for yourself because that keeps the thing going. Now, don't get greedy because most of us have perfectionists inside us, and perfect is the enemy of best. So once you start in the habit, once you're beginning this journey of bringing about your first change, don't make I will eat healthy, exercise every day, sleep on time, wake up on time, do this, do that, all of it at once. Then nothing is going to happen. It's all bound to fail because now you have taken a mountain worth of work, as part of your new change. Every long journey starts with one small step. And at the end of the day, every journey is nothing but a step after step after step. So we'll only take one step at a time. Once we succeed, we can add on the next thing. So once your micro habit becomes a habit, you can start with another micro habit, right? But you don't try to solve all the problems in one day and get greedy about it. And the last one as part of the plan is committing. Commit to the plan, right? Commitment releases a huge amount of energy. All the energy that is trapped inside us, behind our desires and fears and indecision, now all of that energy becomes available to go towards the plan once we commit and decide. Commitment is like a pre-decision. It's like your current self making a decision for your future self. So, for example, is when I come back from walking my dog, if I ask myself at that time, hey, should I do a yoga or not? Most likely I'm tired and I'm going to say, skip it. But because my past self, my wise self, my planning self made a decision that I'm going to do yoga after walking the dog, I will just do it. I don't ask myself a question on that day. I've already decided it. And so don't even pose yourself the question in the current moment. You have made a pre-decision and a commitment to your plan. And that itself, allows you to just move forward. And if you're too tired, maybe I don't do yoga for very long that day. I don't do 1 hour yoga. I may not be as intense in my actions, but I'll still go through the motions of doing it. And that is what the habit I'm trying to create. So that is the plan, right? That is the step or phase 2, which is creating the plan, the micro habit, the trigger, the reward, don't get greedy and commit. And the last and the most important piece is what I call the recovery plan. Now, most of you probably know all that I have talked about so far, but the last element of change, and the most critical one, which most people miss, is recovery. What this means is when you mess up, because you're going to, what are you going to do? The default reaction we have is self criticism. Oh, I'm not capable of doing this change. I'm bound to fail. I failed. It's just not in me. But if you can make a recovery plan which looks like, hey, every time I fail, I will assess what went wrong, what triggers need to change, what can I learn from what went wrong, and I'm going to offer myself kindness because I'm a beginner. I'm starting this new journey. I'm bound to fail. For example, I am allowed to miss yoga 2 times a week. So that's kind of my recovery plan, right? So 80% I will do it, 20% I'm allowed to miss it. If I miss it, and next day when I show up, I'm going to show up with no judgment. Right? And some days if I'm just feeling not motivated, who's my support circle? Who can I lean on to keep me on track and motivated? Could be an online group you join, could be a buddy you have, or a loved one who can remind you of what you're capable of. What is your recovery plan? Because you're bound to mess up, guaranteed, 100%. Right? So how will you show back up? How will you make the U-turn? How will you come back with kindness? Who will help you get back on track? So, and obviously in your plan, make some buffer for mistakes. So that's the recovery plan. So that's all I had, right? So before the plan, which is getting aware of your dreams, acknowledging them, and allowing yourself. The actual plan, which is what is your micro habit, what is your trigger, what is your reward, what is your commitment, and don't get greedy. And then last phase, which is post plan or recovery plan. When you do mistakes, which you're going to, how are you going to come back? So those are like, I think of 3 phases that are applicable to any change we are trying to make in our life. Could be a physical habit, could be a mental habit, could be an emotional habit. But once we make a habit out of something, then it's bound to stick. So we can have a discussion.